Russ Weakley, Accessible States in Design Systems.
First of all, I'm going to be looking at the different states. I'm going to be talking about what that means. And then we're going to look at some accessibility issues around it. And then talk about how, in the past, I've systemized them in various design systems, component libraries. Sound like a plan? So the first thing we should do is always look at the W3C, or the three toilets, as I like to call it. So it has that beautiful... I'm slightly dyslexic, by the way, so that's why. So the W3C defines it as dynamic properties that convey the characteristics of a user interface component, which means bugger all to anyone. That's a typical W3C definition. So what does it really mean? Well, it really is just about common states that can be applied to components. And they're things like unvisited, visited, focused, hover, active, checked, invalid, disabled. They're the most common ones. Make sense? Yeah, that's all we're talking about. So we're going to look at these different states, and along the way I'm going to be talking about some people that I've run into while doing user testing, and some of the issues that I found. Most of them made me cry at some point, which all user testing inevitably does for all of us. So the first thing we're going to talk about is unvisited. So that's only applies to links, and it is when they're in the unvisited state, which means they haven't been clicked on by a user. And the first person I want to talk to you about is a lady called Valerie. So Valerie's 85, probably like your parents, although you're all very young, so probably more like all your grandparents. In fact, looking at maybe all of your great-grandparents. But anyway, she's 85, she's retired, she rarely uses the web at all, so she'd be classified as technically challenged. And there was a designer involved in this who was a wanker, basically. And basically, they designed links not to look like links. I'm sure you've run into those sort of people before sometimes, yeah, who turn off underlines and decide to make colour ambiguous. Anyway, she couldn't tell that it was a link, so she couldn't complete the process. Have you ever done a user testing session where you're watching these and you ask them to do a simple task and they actually can't complete the task? And this was literally because it was just an ambiguous link. That was just, should make the designer cry, not me. So it's so obvious, but we're going to start with the most basic one, make links look like links, at least within the content areas of the web page. If we get that far, we're going to go a long way. Watch this guy try and take photos of me on the run. Okay, next one up is visited. So these, of course, only apply to states as well. So the visited link states are only ones that have been triggered, and they're ones that exist inside the browser history. Of course, you all clear your browser history every night, don't you? Oh, God, come on, guys. So the next person I want to talk about is Mark. So Mark, I tested about 5 years ago, and he'd sustained a head injury and from a motorbike accident, which a lot of young males do, and he suffered from short-term memory issues. And that caused two sort of interesting issues when testing with him. The first one is that throughout a process, he would forget where he was in the process. But more importantly, because it was a frontal lobe issue, he had no ability to check his emotions. So not only was he forgetting, but he would actually get more and more angry as he was going on and more and more frustrated. And it was the first time I actually saw something as simple as a visited link state having an impact on him. So the page was, if you imagine a page which had a series of steps off it. So there were 10 steps off the page, and you would click on a link, go off and do something and come back. And what was happening was he would go off and do part of a process and come back, but because they weren't changed to a visited link colour, he would go back in again, and he got more and more frustrated. And a lot of people would say, oh, that's a very uncommon scenario, but there are a wide range of people with all sorts of different cognitive disabilities. So just simply making a visited link look like a visited link can have a huge impact for some users. Next one is focus. This one's massive, of course. So the focus is when an element is triggered and it's currently in focus. So this could be any interactive element, links, buttons, triggers, open and close triggers, things like that. It's also things like tabs, inputs, selects, text areas, anything that can receive focus. So the next person I want to talk to you about is a lady called Judy. So Judy is 65, she has cerebral palsy, so the only way she navigates around a web page is using a head wand. So she has a thing strapped to her head with a stick out there and a knob on the end of it, and she will use that to navigate around the page. If she wants to use the mouse, she has what's called sticky keys, so her number keypad is locked so that she can actually tab around it. Like, I don't know whether you remember back in the 1950s when you played video games with a mouse, with a keyboard. You people wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. But there was a time when we didn't have controllers and we actually had to use the number keypad. Does anyone remember that? Then you're all old too. Not that I'm trying to insult you at all, but you're old as hell. What was happening is Judy was trying to navigate around the website. It was a news website that I won't name, news.com.au. And what was happening was that at some point, actually not even sure that was that site, but anyway, it was a big news site. I just decided to slander them and be sued. I'm fine with that. I've got millions. Anyway, throughout the process, she was watching so she's tabbing through, and then at some point the designer decided to turn off focus. It must be the same designer that did that link in the other job. But anyway, for some reason it was turned off, and she just had no idea where she was on the page. Now, for years, probably like a lot of you people that teach accessibility or know about WCAG, you sort of talk about this all the time, but it's only when you see it, and you see someone like Judy sit there going, I have no idea where I am on this page anymore. It's just like, holy hell, this is just ridiculous. So make sure focusable items have a visible focus state. Yeah? It's a very simple thing to do. Now, so you can either use the default ring or style it out to whatever you want. I prefer to use a really strong contrast. And what I do is I turn it into a reverse. And so I do something like this. So the top row, there's an image on screen, and it's basically got a link and a button beside it. And then the second row, so that's the static state, and the second row has focus for the link and button, and I just reverse them out. So I make them ugly as hell. But that's so they can be seen, clearly seen whenever you travel through the web page. So I can see what you're thinking. Those damn designers again. Does it sound like I'm bagging designers? Well, they should be. So anyway, I've had designers say they're ugly. But the reality is they're generally only used by keyboard users, so it's not normally a problem. I can see what you're thinking. They'll still show up somewhere. Yeah. You're still concerned, well, there's JavaScript. And in fact, Ben wrote one earlier. But one I like to use is this one. It's actually a great article, actually, which goes right through it. And it's called Removing That Ugly Focus Ring and Keeping It Too. But it's a great article which talks right through. You wrote it, did you? I read it. I thought, my God, we got the audience, a member in the audience. But it's a fantastic article which shows you how you can do that, so you can have your cake and eat it too, or the designers can have their cake. Damn designers. So the other thing is that I set inputs and selects and text areas with a border rather than a background, obviously, because you don't want to put background colour on it. So in this example, we have an input and in focus. Nice big black border on it. But I also do it for checkable items, so things like checkbox and radios. So I use a border on those as well. So in this diagram, in the top row, we have radio, checkbox, and segmented control. And then the line below has them in focus state, and they've got a very strong black outline. And the reason why I use an outline, not a border, will become clear a bit soon, because we want to put it in two different states. Next up is hover. So the hover state is obviously when you're hovering over an element, and this can be applied to any sort of clickable element. We're going back to Judy now. So Judy's doing a different thing now. So I asked her to perform a task where she had to move out into the middle of a page and click on a link. So for Judy, what she has to do is move over to that number pad, as I said to you, and she has to tap to get this thing to move right over to her. So this takes a lot of effort. So she's not sure this is a link. Again, that same damn designer on a different job again has turned off that. It's the one person. If we can find that designer. Anyway, so she's trying to get to this link and she's not sure it's a link. And this is investment for her. She's had to do a lot of tapping to get there. And one of the problems is she just wasn't sure if that was a link. Now, when she hovered over it, you could see she went, oh, good. And then she clicked on it. So it gave a reinforcement that it was a link. So hover states provide a confirmation that they're on the right track. Now, I do something that some people don't do, and that's I often put hovers on input, selects, and text areas as well. And that's just to make them all very clear they're interactive. Now, that's a personal choice. Again, I found it really good for cognitive impaired users. That really makes it clear that these are all interactive. So in this case, you'll see that we have all the different sort of focusable elements. We've got our static state for input, text area, selects, radio checkboxes, and segmented controls. One big breath. And on the next line, we have a hover state for them all. So even on inputs, selects, I put a soft hover state on there as well. That's a personal choice. You don't have to do it, but I just find it really helps users. Next up we have active, and it's really very similar to hover. This is that tiny point where you just click on a link, etc. That's that active state. And it can be applied to any clickable element. And it's really the same thing for Judy. And what I noticed was when she was moving over to click on a link, there was this funny sound she made when she clicked it and it flashed. Weirdly enough, I don't even think it was on the same site, but the designer put an active state on there. They just changed it on active. And I heard her go, ah. Now, I know that's like a tiny sound, but that was like a feeling like I've done something. For someone that's invested all this effort, and there was just that feeling of like, I did, I've actually done a link. So it's a really good idea. So as mentioned before, these things just help clarify to the user and, let them know that they're doing the right thing. So it confirms the success. Disabled. Damn it. So the disabled state means that users can't interact with them. These are the bane of any website. Does everyone agree? Terrible things. So here we have a beautiful diagram. This took me hours to handcraft. And the label says disabled input, and it's a soft grey. And the input is a soft grey, and the background is even softer grey. We've got inception of grey going on here. So we're back to Valerie. I don't know if you remember from earlier. She's 85, the technically challenged lady. So this one was bizarre. So she was trying to fill in a form. I think it was I was asking her to go on a trip as if she was booking a trip. And weirdly, the developer, it's playing off what Ben was saying before, the developer had left focus available to disabled states. Now, the amount of effort you'd have to go to actually do that is quite insane. Like, by default, it just... So they must have made all this effort to... It just boggles the mind. Anyway, she was actually thinking that it was active because it received focus. Now, she's 85. I mean, I just watched it. Have you ever watched a user testing session where you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to die? And they just go on, and you can't say anything. You're like, it's there, click it. But you can't do that. So you just watch it, and then you just go, they failed. And that's not on them. That's on the developer. So the first thing is, really, I think we all know this. You shouldn't have a disabled thing on the page at all unless it's telling a really important user story, like it's there to explain something of value. But if it is disabled, make sure it's clearly identified as disabled. And there's this beautiful thing, I'm sure we've all seen it in WCAG. Can anyone tell me the criteria? Come on. Someone would know that. Anyway, for those that can't read it, it is user interface components that are not available for user interaction, i.e. disabled HTML elements, are not required to meet colour contrast requirements in WCAG 2.1. So in this case, I can see some people actually rattling through what it is. What's it? I can't remember. That was just a test for you guys. I didn't say I remembered it, but thanks for telling me, because I will say, in the future, I'll just nonchalantly say what it is, and I'll go, it's 411? Yeah. Anyway, so the important thing is you don't need to make it, in fact, you want to make it less than accessible anyway. The other thing is that, it sounds so obvious, don't make it accessible, focusable, as if that needs to be said. Next one is invalid. So on the invalid, that's anything where the users try to put something in and it's considered invalid data. So another beautiful diagram which took hours to create. We have our label text, we have an input which is bright red. We have a little icon beside it with an error message, all looking good. So this person is, I was testing with, their name was Pavel, 39. I didn't know at the time they had red-green colour blindness. Now again, I don't know, you're constantly talking to people about colour blindness, but I was actually watching this guy fill in a form and went past something or filled it in incorrectly, and the outline of the input went red, but he kept moving through the form, and then he submitted. I was like, dude, you know how you sometimes judge people harshly, which is kind of rude. But you're like, it's right there. Anyway, he's like, oh, he's umming and ahhing, and he's going backwards and forwards, and I'm like, it's right there. And eventually he goes, well, that's slightly different colour. I guess it's that. And I was like, oh. Anyway, we finished the test, and at the end of the test, I asked him about it. He goes, oh, yeah, I've got red. He actually said, I can't even pronounce that, but he said, I've got this colour blindness. And it was like, I actually saw it in the wild, that real world thing. So it's funny to see that. So when you're filling in a form, colour alone can sometimes, if you use colour alone to identify something, that's going to be a failure. So what we should do is avoid using colour alone. So put an icon there or do something else that clearly identifies that. And it's only, against when you see these things in the wild, you go, wow, that can have a big impact. Okay, rolling through. Checked or selected. So they're the obviously checked states, a beautiful diagram of a check button. So this one's Dia. She's 35. She's highly proficient. This wasn't even a user test. I was actually just sitting there watching go through an issue, and she was squinting at the screen because there was a little radio button, and she checked it. And I watched her go, is that checked? And I was thinking, man, we've got problems. If you're looking at something like that and you're an expert and you just squint at the screen and go, is that checked? And so really, don't make them use it. Work hard. Make it clear. If you're going to customize them, really make people clear. Next up, checked and focus. So some people don't know this, but it's possible to have these two states at once. So let's use, I'm going to whip through these. Let's use an example. Here's a beautiful diagram. Choice 1 and choice 2, radio buttons. So we could have the focus state. So if you move into it, it's currently in focus state right now. So if a user tabs into it. If a user checks on it, it now becomes checked. But it's possible to be both checked and in focus. So they're two different states. Now I could see you saying, why should I care? Why should you care? We're all going to die soon anyway. So really, there's no point. So this is also relevant for segmented control. So anyone who hasn't seen a segmented control, this one's a segmented control. Did someone booing segmented controls? Were you attacked by a segmented control as a child?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, those don't know what we are. We're talking about two, let's just call them LSD tablets stuck together. I'm just using something that's obviously, from your childhood. So, back to Valerie. So this poor woman was trying to, it was on the same website actually, was trying to fill in something for her trip, this fake trip we asked her to go on. And she was unable to distinguish between the focused and the check state on this segmented control. So I think it was something really important where we asked her, you had to say yes or no. And it looked like it had already been checked, but it was actually just in focus. So she actually went through the form and hit submit, and then it threw her back, and she's like, what's the problem? She couldn't actually see the problem. It was just simply because they hadn't defined the two. So make sure there are different states clearly identified between those two. And as mentioned before, I like to make them really clear. So in this diagram, we have, as we said before, the focus state for all of these is big outline. When you go to check state, I've gone to a background color. And then when you put them together, you've got a nice big board. Now, that's just one way to do it. There's no right or wrong here. I can see you're writing to the local MPs. Right, the last one we've got to do before going on to systemizing is non-native HTML elements. Now, anyone that sat in Ben's earlier, you know the pain we're talking about here. But Ben was talking about all the behaviours. The other thing we've got to talk about is their states. If you're making something non-native, you've got to also be aware of them. We're talking about something built out of divs and spans, which is basically the whole of the web these days. Anyone building in React, they don't need to know about HTML. Let's just use divs and spans. So anyway, if you're going to use them, you must include them. So if you take something simple like an accordion, there's no way to do, there's a detail element, but that sucks, so let's leave that out. So there's no non-native way to, no native way, let me say that again in English. There is no native way to do that well. So the only way to do it is to hack. I'm just waiting to see what they try and interpret that as. They did a better job than I did. Okay, so what we're going to do is you should include all the different states. So here's it in static state, a diagram of an accordion. And there we have a beautiful hover state on item number 2. And then we go, oh my, look at that focus state. It's kind of sexy, isn't it? And then we have an active state just when you're clicking on it, and then boom, it opens. So at least 4 states are needed. Sometimes people don't put any of them on, maybe just an open and shut. Bastards. Okay, now we're going to talk about systemizing. How long have we got, by the way?
You've got the time.
No time, okay, just as well. Right, I work in design systems. Who else works in design systems? A few of you? Okay. We all know what a design system is? It's just a big glorified component library with extra stuff. I was going to say shit, but that would have been bad. Oh. So systemizing your states makes it easier to establish consistency, makes them easy to maintain, and add new components. So how do you systemize all these states? Well, I use this massive table. Are you ready? Boom. What do you think? It's gone. Oh, you weren't going to take photos. I'll go back. Hang on. Oh, hang on. There we go. What a bastard. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to break this down. And it's all available on a website too. So we break it down. So this table has a row for each possible state. And so down in rows, we have static, visited, hover, focus, active, disabled, invalid, selected and focused. Yeah? And then the components are grouped in columns. So you could have things like links, buttons, form controls, selectable form controls, and then any other sort of non-native components you have to build out. Make sense? What this does is allow you to see right across them all the states and get consistency. One thing I can't stand, like a lot of you, the first thing you ever do is unplug the mouse and click around a website, yeah? That's the first test you should ever do on any website. And if you can't use the keyboard only, you should throw the keyboard at the developer's head. But that's the first test. But have you noticed that when you click around, sometimes there's all these different focus states, like designer, it's the same designer. They're just, making their own creative decisions for focus across the board. Whereas a table like this allows you to see across every single component and have a consistency. And consistency is next to godliness. That should be on a tea towel. I just talked about that. Right, let's talk about links first. So for the links, I have different ones for light and dark. So in this first two columns, we have links on a white background and on a black background. And you can see we have them for static, visited, hover, focus, and active or pressed. So we're going well. And they're the different states of them. Next up, we have buttons. And for buttons, it depends on your component library. A lot of things like material design, and ones I work on, they have things like primary, secondary, tertiary, and icons or something like that. So in this case, we have columns for primary, secondary, link, and icon. And you'll see we don't need a visited state for the buttons, but we need a static, hover, focused, active, pressed, and sometimes a disabled. You notice I didn't put a disabled link? That is the work of Satan. Form controls. So we break form controls into clickable and non-clickable. So first of all, just basic form controls. These are for inputs, selects, and text areas. So we have input text area and select. And I broke them into two. One of the reasons, it gets back to one thing Ben was talking about earlier. You may not be able to see this, but I'm mapping all the what am I calling them? Mousy icon-y things. Cursors, thank you. Had a brain fart there. Mousy icon-y things. Is that going to come up? Oh, yes! This person rocks. Okay, so for these things, we need static, hover, focus, disablement. At least I got that word right. Okay, selectable form controls. For these ones, we have different columns for radio, checkbox, and segmented control. And as you can see, they've got a lot of different states in them. We don't need a visited state. We've got static, hover, focus, disabled, invalid, selected, and selected focused. Now, that's about it. But basically, you can just keep adding to them. So in my things, we just add and add and add. And what it means is, when you come across a new component, you can just add a new set of columns and just get it consistent. It becomes so easy. You don't have to think about it. But this is just an example. And one way to do it. You can do whatever you want. I've got a table online. Now, I've got this for designers, so it's not in code. It's actually built in Illustrator. But it's available as images for people. Highly inaccessible. Oh, the irony. But it's available for people if they want. So what are the takeaways? One, I'm insane, and this person is much better at constructing sentences than I ever will be. But first of all, it's important to design all of these different states, especially for non-native widgets. All of the different states. Be aware of all of them. And the reason why is they can have an impact on real users. Who does user testing? I asked you before. Have you noticed any of this sort of thing in your world? It's so important. Go and watch users, test with real users. And that's the other thing. When you build this table and implement it, go and test it. Don't just, talk to your own team, but see if it works for your teams. And number two, try to systemize all the states. So that means people have a consistent user experience as they travel through your website, in whatever form they may, whether it's someone like Judith or someone with a cognitive impairment, etc. We talked about that. So I'm done. That's it.
Thank
we
you
don't
very
have
much,
any time
Russ.
for questions.
That was...
Oh. Oh. It's gone. He's gone home for
we
the
do
night.
have time for questions, so...
Yes. Oh, look at him go. Wow.
That photo was from 1927, by the way. Sunglasses were only just invented.
Has anyone got any questions for Russ? Oh, down the back, Sean.
No, Sean's not allowed to ask questions.
Coming to you with the mic, Sean.
I'm just waiting for the abuse here. What did I get wrong?
what did I get wrong? Well, not much. Other than how to slide it, I can't access and I want it.
We'll talk later.
Good.
Happy to
How much
chat.
do I have to pay? That's the question.
Oh, okay. So it was kind of abuse, and fair enough. We all done? Oh,
No, Ben.
I was actually going to ask you something, Ben. We chatted before. You know, on the div and span, when it was disabled, did you change the cursor to a disabled cursor on the div?
You win the prize. I absolutely knew someone would find something I'd missed, and I should have mentioned that during my talk, was that I was totally convinced I had still missed something. You win the prize. It's an iceberg.
Yeah, it's an endless iceberg. Anyway,
I know, I need a long one. So the question I had about the grid you've created is a really fantastic tool. Have you looked into doing this in potentially any of the design to code crossover tools like the React to Sketch and that kind of stuff? Or have you put any thought about how it could be further systematized to automate it? Because I imagine maintaining. Maybe the real question is how do you maintain it?
know exactly what you mean, because I've built quite a range of component libraries, and in one that I built of my own, which is called Simplex, I end up having to create fake classes for all that sort of stuff and hide them out of the system, because one of the problems is in HTML you can't expose the states openly. So what I end up having to do is to create fake states for all of them as classes and hide them out of the system but show them on the page. So you've got to do all this extra legwork. But yeah, it's possible.